The hip-hop writer is a creator, composing understanding words of culture brilliance, powering a rebalance of the elements equally. Pages of rejuvenated reaffirmation, simply the almighty leadership of insightful craft work that stands to build through any confrontation born to be. Yet his daily duties as a journalist that questions properly, uses his ears for the good to filter the real. And as the art decays by dilution, he concentrates the best again and again, exposing it in the print. Today's journalist and tomorrow's historian, he listens to share. Here is that necessary attempt executed again and again and again. This is the Power Right Show on S.STREET Media. This is your brother, the lone low life with the home-sewn garment, the Boricua with the build, the true and living God stepping in score, Sunni is Allah, a.k.a. Skillustrator Low. And we're on S.STREET Media, the evolution of media. Every intrigue will have its own show. Every incredible thought will have its own episode. And every timeless insight will be archived. And what's this show about? You say, this show's about my element in hip-hop. It's the only show about the writer element of hip-hop, ideally about art on art and science on music. This is what it's all about, right? This is what it's all about. So, the only show in history about this, though, this is me coming to you with 20 plus years of experience and a whole lot of shit. But, I was just thinking that this is the end of the Dark Ages. Not the end of the Dark Ages, the end of what I call the invisible Renaissance. You know what I mean? So one thing's for certain, though, like 2019 is the end of the decade. So if I call this decade the invisible Renaissance, that means that the next decade will either be a scene Renaissance or it's back to shit again. You know what I mean? I don't know. I love doing this. I love doing this hip hop shit though, but I'm gonna go with the latter. I think it's gonna turn to shit. You know what I mean? And I think what's gonna happen though is I'm gonna be, continue to be that lone low life on the airwaves. No one listening. Everybody hears it, but no one's listening. Everybody tunes in though, but no one will care. They'll hear about the demise of hip hop. Remember that genre? Where they used to do drums and shit and talk on the drums and shit? Yeah, they don't do that anymore nowadays, you know? I saw a guy, he was talking about that a couple of weeks ago, but they don't do that shit anymore. It's gonna be near extinct, you know what I mean? And I was thinking fatalistically in this way, if kids rap the way they do now and they have no sense of like timing and in the pocket is just clothing that's too tight, I wonder what the next generation of kids, how they'll rhyme. It's going to be terrible. You imagine what future trap, what's the future trap going to sound like? That's just going to sound terrible. You know what I mean? And speaking of that, because we do need to progress with some music and stuff. This show, I have a guest that I hopefully, I'm expecting to come through. But even though we still got tons of music to build on. But this is why the expectation of a particular superior artist to come through allowed me to take an ease on my intense study of Quincy Jones and his catalog and the Quincy, my goodness, I said, I'll do a show about Quincy. And then I made a playlist and I said, let me put all my Quincy Jones albums. Shit, I didn't know it was that many. It's like 53, I personally have 53 albums of Quincy Jones. And then when you put all the stuff that he's produced, arranged, and composed for, that the amount of songs is I'm funneling through like 800 plus songs so far, and I'm missing mad shit. You know what I mean? Because I don't have the entire my personal jazz collection doesn't have a deep enough Count Basie collection to encompass all of that. But it's nothing that I can't solve with some YouTube research, just to give a perspective about when that comes through and stuff, you know what I mean? And if they have the whole thing, I jack it. I jack it. There's plenty. Make a collection, young brothers and sisters, though. Make a collection. You know what I mean? Like if somebody says you should listen to that album, you know, when they say What's Going On might be the greatest soul record of all time from Marvin Gaye, you know, you should have that. You know, you shouldn't just listen to it on YouTube. You should jack it. You need to download. It's 7 songs, right? 7, 8, 9 songs. You know what I mean? And you got to put it together. Because you got to hold this music. This is where I come from. I don't care about the digital era for streaming too much. As far as streaming music, I need to have it myself. You know, it's why a lot of you artists that don't give me your music, you think I'm out there buying music? There's like hundreds of albums that came out already. I got children. I have family. You know what I mean? Get me that music, and I'll tell you if it's incredible. Don't put it out there and say it's incredible. So you got to stream your music. But as a listener, I would think you want to own some of that stuff, or at least be in a position where you could study it, you know. And some of the albums that if I get to them today, and our guest doesn't show, I'll get into them because there's a lot of albums that I didn't talk about that I want to talk about that are a little bit older, and I mean a little bit older, like 2 months, 3 months. That's like 1,000 years ago and shit. That's like 1,000 years ago because people are, you know, like. You're played out if you bought Rosebud's Revenge too. Like if you bought that now, like you're out of the loop. And it's like that. Sometimes we would be on that. Like in the 90s, we would be buying like you know, an album, a really great album months later. You know, like think about it, right? If you bought one album a week, even in 1994, you could be behind some really good albums because let's say you bought Illmatic when it came out in April. You know, you're still behind. You would have guys like J. Rue, Redman, OC, Diggable Planets and stuff. So if you bought just one a week, you'd be behind. In this era, you're about 2, 3, 4, 5 behind, and it's hard to give things a listen. So what happens is that it's the first listen that counts, though. So thankfully, I been hearing music a long time, so the first listen I hear a lot more things than the first listen. But just as I'm telling you, I don't completely respect my first listen. It's not good enough, you know. But before I continue, this unless you're streaming it live now on Ustream, this would have happened like a week or 2 ago. Yeah, because I'm on point. You know what I mean? If these MCs are gonna have 20 albums out, I'm gonna have a couple of shows ahead. You know what I mean? But one of the great session players, one of the great composers of Latin music, Boricua, Jerry Gonzalez, brother of Andy Gonzalez, he passed away, I learned about today. And he passed away kind of fatally. Tragically, I should say. Everybody passes away fatally. What's wrong with me, right? He passed away tragically. From what I read, he was in his house in Madrid, caught fire, and you know, he didn't make it. He died of cardiac arrest. So it was probably the smoke and everything that got to him. But I got to meet and build with Jerry Gonzalez and the Fort Apache Band members at the time. In the late 90s, I don't know what year. I got to look through my actual photos, and I don't mean archives of Instagram and shit, but actual handheld photos. Like I got to go through a photo album to see when this happened. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you forget back then to write down the year or the date on the back of a photo. Didn't realize how important that was going to be. You know what I mean? Because you forget. But Jerry Gonzalez, right? This is one of the legendary players and stuff, along with his brother Andy Gonzalez, because when salsa was that subgenre that derived out of son with a more jazzy appeal. I'm really generalizing the whole genre, but let's say son is this. Son is distinct arrangements, is very set. They don't do intense solos. If it's a solo, they know exactly where it's going to be. Like it's in a box. Like pretend the times are boxes in a song, you know, between bridges and everything else. whatever trumpet solo or stuff you're gonna hear is segmented, you know. So compare that to an Eddie Palmieri record where his 10-minute songs where he'll do like an intro solo for like 3 minutes. That would never happen in a song record. If you hear it happen today from a Cuban, it's because they're doing progressive music. What a lot of people don't know is that Fidel's reign in Cuba actually led to more progressive music because he kicked out all that coonery. So they had to come out with something new. And they actually were more progressive than stuff here, you know. Salsa went sappy in the 80s, you know what I mean? Lovey-dovey stuff and no real skill sets from the singer, sonero, or the musicians. But the way I saw Jerry Gonzalez, Andy Gonzalez, and all those musicians that ended up becoming affiliated, a part of Libre, which is Manny Oquendo's group. He passed away years ago too. They kind of had more traditional or more better training with the musicianship. So when they were doing their music, they were able to engage in a deeper type of song mixed into their music. They were able to pay homage a little bit more quality, not like the wild stuff that Willie was doing in the beginning, Willie Colon, that would eventually progress. So you kind of separate your salsa collecting in the 70s. To me, this is the way I did it. I was getting that brash stuff. I didn't care about no musicianship. I cared about guys just beating those congas crazy, talking about across 110th Street like Lavo was, you know what I mean? Calle Luna, Calle Sos, take out your knife, you know what I mean? Take out your knife because this is rugged streets, you know, that kind of shit. And so the sloppiness of the solos and the arrangements was stuff that I didn't always, I loved it. I loved it. It was like listening to 36 Chambers, which is, for example, it's like a sloppy record, but man, when you master your mistakes, I forgot. Oh yeah, Dizzy Gillespie said something about that. Like, you got to know where to make your mistakes. You know what I mean? That's a real mastery. So like, when Jerry Gonzalez and those musicians, they were part of Ray Barretto's band, so they had a mixture of quality but also brashness. But when they went solo and they did their own thing and Libre took off, as you age as a listener and you listen to those Libre records, you start to understand the quality of the musicianship and how they had the brashness, but they also had the quality. So I came to love those records as I go along, and I loved all those albums with Andy Gonzalez on bass. But Jerry Gonzalez, he went more of a jazz route, or more of a Latin jazz route. And what happened was when he went that more Latin jazz route, Jerry Gonzalez was able to make records that really like encompass both. And I remember when I saw him live, I could tell like the audience when the band got more jazzy, because it was at college, at Baruch College, and they performed, and I could tell like I wasn't the in tune listener, because like most of the crowd, I just wasn't feeling the more Montuno sets, the Montuno vibes, than when they went into straight ahead jazz. And I realized that I could like a part more, but I wasn't really appreciating the jazz segments as much. So I realized I had to learn more and study more. I didn't take it like, oh, that's more boring than that. I always took it like I'm not a deep enough listener. I have to spend more time with it. But Jerry Gonzalez and the Fort Apache band, because they were from the BX, they were out there in the Bronx. They made a lot of great albums, and in a time that's limited, I didn't get to talk about the albums that they have because I can't remember them by name. I haven't heard them in years, but I love them, you know. And it's funny. It's been years since I hear them, and just because I haven't digitized them for a long time, they kind of got lost in that transfer. But wow, what a great musician and a lot of great records, though. You know, if there was one essential record of the eclecticness, and I'll leave it at this, in this Remembered Imperfection, you know, small tribute that I could do for him, there's a group, they got a long-ass name. Even my Spanish is going to be challenged right now. grupo folclórico y experimental nueva-yorkino, literally meaning the folk group and Nuyorican experimental group. Like, that's some crazy shit. But they did two albums. One was called Concepts and Unity, and the other one was called Lo Dice Todo, 1975 and 1976. I think the 75 album, Concepts and Unity, that really shows you like the kind of progressive merging of Puerto Rican and Cuban musicians that was going on at that peak of salsa in the mid 70s. And of course Jerry was a part of that, if I remember correctly. I know my man Richie Blonde, Boricua, our Latin music enthusiast and historian, will correct me if I'm wrong about anything. You know, I'll definitely do a little addendum. But I just want to give salute to that brother, because when we talk about New York music and that grittiness and that smoothness, you know, he's part of that pantheon. You know, and remembered in perfection to that brother. You know, they were real peace, you know, already legends when I met them. And, you know, they had so little ego, you know what I mean? And I think about it now because I wasn't as musically intelligent back then. And so I said some stuff that didn't make sense, and they still wasn't, you know, they wasn't looking down on me. They was appreciative, you know? So with that said, another thing, I gotta give a shout out to my brother out in the UK, Cyrus Malachi of Triple Darkness crew. That's man, easily my favorite crew out in the UK. Hardcore shit, lyricism. Cyrus Malachi has a deep tone, like imagine Killer Priest though with a deeper tone, and he's a lyricist. You know what I mean? An engaging lyricism. When I personally make my essential MCs of this of decade, I put him in there because I think his 3 solo albums are next level. You know, they're next level in lyricism and ideas and stuff. And he's got a new one out. Should be out by the time you hear this. Basquiat. It's an EP called Basquiat. So I think it's all produced by one brother out there in the UK, but I don't remember his name. You know, at the time of this show, I just literally got the text from him saying that he just sent it to me and it's going to be out on the Bandcamp and soon to be on the other outlets. So we'll definitely look into that. But yo, October 1st, right? October 1st, today is the Knowledge Day. So when you hear this, I don't care what day you think it is. This is Knowledge Day for me. It'll be the Wisdom Day tomorrow, though. So I just remember these things. On October 1st, if I remember correctly, it's Hellraiser's born day. You know what I mean? But it's also the born day of, which I find a real synergy in, the born day of Gandhi, and then also Itman. You know what I mean? So you either gonna be nonviolent or you can get that violence on. You know what I'm saying? There's one or the other, though. We could do both ways, though. That's how, you know what I mean? That's what it means to me, you know? But tomorrow, for me, tomorrow is October 2nd. And a more important born day for me is my daughter's born day. So she's gonna be power, you know? And if any degree symbolizes her nature, it's definitely power. So this is gonna be an intense year. You know what I mean? So I had written this piece for her a while back. I called it, I put it on a piece, I think it was on a reel of 2017 for the EPs and the original mixtapes. I called it Alma's EP. I said, layer the soul in the soil and turn the petals of precision. I tell you, this child gonna flower the world. Direct beauty into a stereoed aroma. Surrounded her only with the incense of song. A stream so luxurious, I wonder if I dare dissipate it all in a loud sniff. More extra play, she rewind her say. Tracks got her on the cliffs of keyboards. Extreme perfection. The songs smell like the roses she wears in her notes. Breathe you a listen. So yeah, I wrote that for her, and she's very musical. She's very deep in a lot of respects. So that's why I wrote that for her. But happy born day, little girl. You know. So again, like I was saying, though, we're gonna have an upcoming show, unless certain incredible guests say that they're gonna come through. We are going to have a Quincy Jones show. It's be like a Quincy Jones appreciation hour. We're going to go through Quincy Jones, the Quincy, entitled Quincy Netflix documentary. Going to analyze it. Some of the ideas about his career, some of the ideas about his life that were in there, that were in the documentary, because it's hard if I talk about Quincy, I have to criticize things he's done in his life, but also applaud them and put them in some kind of perspective, because the documentary itself went through those things. And I'll go through that documentary. I also go through his this idea, the analysis of his career, as opposed from the vantage point of producer versus arranger versus composer, because especially us that listen to hip hop, we don't really think about what a arranger composer is compared to a producer, and how a producer that isn't doing hip hop, what the difference is in that. And I want to go through some of that and give some ideas how the perspective changes. But it'll be an appreciation feature, because there's a lot of work, And on that note, short segment, who gives a fuck segment, because it continues, like the same guys. So just in case, because people might want to hear what I think about it, who gives a fuck segment, it's led by none other than Mr. MAGA hat wearing Kanye West. Who gives a fuck? You know what I mean? It's clear that he doesn't really understand what the whole point is. He doesn't understand this is a president that's talking without using dog whistles. It's almost like we should all go back in history and forgive James Brown for advocating for Nixon. We should forgive all the brothers that advocated for Ronald Reagan at different times, because in the end, though, they were all dog whistling. And dog whistling obviously is the idea of putting racial epithets and racial references in a negative tone, without really saying it, though. Predators, like that bitch Hillary, right? And Trump hasn't used the dog whistle this whole time. You know what I mean? The whole presidency. And yet he's still speaking about it on those terms. So when we look at it like that, and he says stuff about love, and he says abstract concepts about loving, and one thing, he's also turning this idea of what hip hop is all about, this idea of a rebellious culture, into him not being allowed to have his own thoughts. Don't turn your stupid ideas into a freedom of speech debate. Because that's where you fall flat, because that's all. Hip hop isn't about letting every dumbass motherfucker say something. It was always funneled. It was always filtered. It's why I've always talked about my column, The Filtered Reel. It's why I talk about in my intro is filtering the real. We've always filtered the real through original creativity. We've always filtered the real among us, though, through those who deal with the highest levels of knowledge when they're speaking. We've always filtered the real through those who deal with actual loyalty that's attached to love for something real. Not this generic love that he's talking about. So when he talks and he gives these ideas, who really gives a fuck? You know what I mean? It's clear that we can't dismiss Kanye because he makes bad music, because the world loves bad music. We're in those times. People love bad music. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter how cheaply done it is. It doesn't matter how much it was, he doesn't draw out the best of an MC, That Nasir album, I haven't heard an album where a guy clearly has immense, pages and pages of juice in the tank, and you didn't get it all out. Like, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, because Ninth gave a couple of break beats, and they say he's not a producer, he's a beat maker, and they try to dismiss him. But boy, he drew out everything Black Thought had in 5 quick songs. And quick songs because some of them had other verses on them. So lengthwise, they would be about, let's give or take, let's say 4 songs, just to be nice, right? Because Rhapsody and Styles P took a lot of the bar time. They took a lot of that bar time. right? So to end that who gives a fuck segment, why are we giving a fuck about the particularities of what he said? And you know when a guy's gone off the deep end though, when white actors and actresses in Hollywood can bomb him and actually be correct. Because at what vantage point does Captain America know about the damn America that we come from? You know? And then when you read his tweet though, it's intelligent, it's articulate, and it has it's more correct. I'll just leave it like that. It's more correct than it's not gonna give Captain. I never give Captain America no props. You know, I don't care. But yeah. So yeah, the whole thing. And I find it funny too that feminists, they attack Trump like the worst thing. The like the only thing he did was talk about grabbing the pussy though, as if that was the only thing he talked about. You know what I mean? It's a whole litany of shit. It's a whole litany of shit. You know, but yeah, just real weak. You know, Kweli, you should stop talking to all these white supremacists though, and you should talk to your mans. You know what I mean? Stop bombing white supremacists as a hobby. You know what I mean? Twitter hobby and shit. You know what I mean? And go bomb your man. You know, it's getting ridiculous over here. You know, it sounds stupid, but you know that was Saturday Night Live's fault for putting him on the show. You know he's gonna say some dumb shit. You know, but yeah, let's do something. I had an experiment with a short little segment here. You know, let's see here. You know that I spoke about this, and I wanted to speak on it in detail. You know, I'm going to save that for the last 20 minutes of the show. Let's talk about some music, but I did call it up here. So we'll go back to that as far as Lauryn Hill and all that, because that might lead to a bigger show. I was going to do a raw build on it. Raw build. I still haven't read her letter, and I wanted to see how it feels in retrospect over a long period of time as it sits. One thing about the media is that there's a difference between the reporting that we used to read, especially about music journalism, wasn't so immediate. So it wasn't always good because we would have to wait a long time for a record. But records they're not intense media. They're not breaking news. So if an album is reviewed in a magazine and actually it had come out 3 months earlier, then it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? However, when it happens now, where people respond to things as if they're breaking news, you don't really get that quality retrospect, you know, where you see the development of certain things over time. So, you know, this is the problem, you know. This is the problem that you see. And I wanted to give that Lauryn Hill piece, though, a kind of a retrospective over a certain amount of time, you know, and see how it traverses over the time. But I'm not going to read it yet. I'm going to save it for maybe the end of the show, you know. But let's go through some of these first listens that I had, you know. I didn't get to go through them, or I don't remember if I went through them in detail. There's definitely some new ones. If there's some old ones, these are the first listens. And it's some of these albums came out a while ago, and I still haven't gotten to talk to them. But you got Smooth and Giallo Point, you know. I think I talked about this, but this record surprised me because the first one was good, but I think the quality, like most producers, is in their samples. And Giallo Point, his sample game, though, the deeper he goes into Italian and Latin boleros, the stronger his work gets. You know, it's just immense. You know, the depth that he gets when he samples there, and I felt like they put much more work into this part two, as far as rhyme schemes, as far as concepts, than they did in the first one, you know? But again, this is first listen, so it needs not only more listens, but it needs a rewind back into the first one to say that. You know, I think that one of the problems is not even their own, but becomes hard to differentiate that slow flow crime rhyme lounge music that's going on. That's a whole new subgenre. Slow flow crime lounge music, you know what I mean? Like, it's in the future, it's going to be lounge music. You're going to go into a lounge, it's going to be like Frank Sinatra, you know what I mean? Like, you'll see Vegas in, let's see, it's 2018 now. I'm gonna say like in 2035, 2040, you're gonna see Rock Marcy like this. Yeah, you know, yeah. How's everybody fucking doing tonight? You know what I mean? Everything's all right with you? Yeah, yeah. And he's gonna give out those ejaculates, you know, but old time ejaculates, you know. Yeah, yeah. You know how I used to spit it back then. Yeah, all over a bitch. You know, move on. You know, running the packs. You know what I mean? And they're gonna perform this though for Las Vegas. It's gonna be perfect though. You know what I mean? It'll be like you know, it'll have that Lou Rawls, Frank Sinatra vibe. You know what I mean? It'll be tight as fuck. You know what I mean? Us old timers will go over there and shit like that. You know, they talk about the good old days. You know, when they'll talk about the good old days when the first time Polo reissued that. You know, this is the third time we got the high tech collection. You know, it'll be like the third, fourth time the kayak shit comes out. You know what I'm saying? I'll be like, you know, I'll be like, yeah, I had the Indian Chiefs way back. This is the fourth time they released them shits. You know what I mean? But I'm pretty sure I talked about it, but since I have it written here, I'm gonna say it again. Man, Rex, I think that I want to use that. I can't use that word sleeper because there's too many albums, so people are gonna sleep on something just by accident. But Rex is one of those that got thrown under because there was so much good promotion that was done. It's all indie promotion, and I think that people like Rock Marcy, they do better indie promotion than others. And he had great promotion of his Behold the Dark Horse album. But Rex and Short Fuse album, Order in Chaos, kind of just came out, and even I myself, the day it came out, I looked for it and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it, and I certainly couldn't find it streaming. Although I didn't look that hard, but most people wouldn't look. They would look, you know, pretty lazily as I did then. So I had to hear it a couple of days later. But there's so much on this though, and if I said it again, I say it again. Rex is one of the great MCs. You know, when I first interviewed Rex, he's one of the first people that asked, how do you practice MCing? And he actually gave me like fucking, you know, like athletic shit. Like he gave me an athletic regimen that he goes through with this shit. Like he's running and doing calisthenics in the pool, doing his rhymes. Like he's speeding in a treadmill, doing his rhymes. He takes runs rhyming and all that kind of shit. You know what I mean? And when you talk to other brothers, like every time I talk to Starvin' B, and I'm always bug out of Starvin' B's breath control, and I go, you know, Starvin', what do you do to practice this? He goes, and he, you know, as he's puffing on a cigarette, you know, because the lungs, they need that coverage, right? They need that foliage that goes in there, right? And he's like, yeah, I don't know what I do. I just do what I do, you know? And I'm like, fucking kidding me? You know what I mean? But shout out to Starvin' B. I taught my class a week ago at a law school in Mecca, and we get out. I get out with one of my students, and one of the other guards is there, and there's a bum. There's like a young brother that's bumming. He's knocked out from being drunk right in front of the school. I said, now, Cypher, hell no. Can't have having that in front of the school. You know what I mean? And we're trying to get the brother up, but these other two guys, they had helped him out, and they called somebody to pick him up. So instead of being able to throw the brother out immediately, like at least walk him, man, do that bummery behind the Apollo. You know what I'm saying? Right? Bad music, the Apollo, right? Just like they throw bad music in behind the Apollo. You know, that's where you go. You go behind the Apollo. But he could stay there and wait for whatever. He went until he wakes up, gets a good sleep. And so we had to wait there and shit, right? And then I see Starvin' B driving. And he says, yo, peace, God. And I said, yo, he goes, peace, Sunyas. And I said, yo, peace, Starvin'. He's driving by, and he said, yo, I remember you do your class, so I drove by. And he gave me. I want to tell him that the remedy he gave me to get this brother out I didn't have to use. You know what I mean? He gave me a bottled water, and he said just splash water on him, no, but I didn't have to do that. You know. So we didn't have to throw the water on him and shit like that. You know, it was, somebody came to pick him up and shit like that, and it was done with already though. But shout to Starvin' B for the add-on. You know what I mean? You know, that would have been funny if we'd been able to throw some water on him. You know what I mean? But on that Rex album though, there's so many techniques that I want to go through, and a lot of the songs deliberately are two slow songs in one slashed together, and they're designed to kind of segue his tempos into other tempos, or segue his flows into other flows. So he's deliberately putting two songs together, deliberately challenging himself. You know, so many challenges, and he's such an easy MC to hear as far as his clarity. You know, guys like that, they don't, you know, they really perfect the craft. You know, and if we talk about like MCs that really came out in the late 2000s, those dark ages, and came into this invisible renaissance, he's one of the toughest. And that song "Bitch I Ain't No Bitch," where it talks about the deliberate effeminization of the black man, the original man, and not pulling any punches on the LGBTQ, every other fucking letter in the alphabet squad. You know what I mean? So whatever you want to call yourself, though, is definitely happening with us. You know what I mean? Can't deny the effeminization and shit like that. You know what I mean? And all that kind of shit. You know? I even see, I live in a gentrified neighborhood, and white parents will apologize for their children if their children identifies your child as what they are. Like if they identify your child as a girl, they actually apologize for their child. You know, yeah, he just assigned gender. I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he's a girl. You know what I mean? Like this is the time we live in, though. Everybody's apologizing for what they are. You know what I'm saying? And Rex really took the daring to go into that, you know, and other ideas. But yeah, there was a lot of new albums since the last time we checked. So definitely those I had talked about, but I added some more ideas. But probably the weirdest record I've heard this year is Cypress Hill's Elephants on Acid. You know what I mean? Yeah, even the title says it's supposed to be weird. I wasn't supposed to be surprised and shit. You know what I mean? But, I was thinking something like, in my mind, like the newer Cypress Hill records that I love, like in the 2000s, like maybe Be Real might be on that tip, like maybe 1998's 4 or 2001's Stone Raiders, where there's a lot of energy and a lot of bars. And I don't mean like battle bars when I say bars. I mean just a lot of lyrics, a lot of words, a lot of time on the mic that Be Real would give, because I thought that's what made Stone Raiders, and that's what made the 4 albums that people don't talk about in Cypress Hill's collection worthwhile. You know, the topics on 4 were more lengthy than on Temples of Boom, even though Temples of Boom is one of the classics that they have. It doesn't measure up in that way. And Stone Raiders is not one of those albums they put into that into that lane, but it's a great album in the catalog. You know, I liked it better than the 2000 album. I'm even forgetting the name though. Let me call it up though. We can't be off point here. You know what I mean? But the Cypress Hill album, one of the 2000 albums that was really big for them, was the Skull and Bones, and I didn't care for Skull and Bones like that. But that's because in my bias, for you listeners out there, my bias tends to be, I kind of find rock music as a sample and as a structure format very lazy, because they put rock music is a very tone deaf music, and it allows you to slap something onto something, and it gives almost an artificial noise to a lot of boom bap that's not really there. You know what I'm saying? So I just don't like it. It doesn't give a lot of depth to the samples, to the music, and it turns a lot of MCs into just yelling through the track, you know? So it's not always my favorite type of music to be sampled. You know what I mean? You got to be a real master to me to get through all that noise. So that's why the Skull and Bones album wasn't a favorite, you know? But the Elephants on Acid, here's the thing. Maybe because my first listen to it was while I was weightlifting. So I'm like going through these sets and I need more help. You know what I'm saying? I need fucking help. I'm reaching the pump here, and I'm like, there's so many skits that Muggs is doing with extra samples and highlighting his musicality of depth. and really delving into Indian sitars and that kind of music. And I was like, yo, when is he gonna throw some fucking drums on this shit? When is Be Real gonna go in? And a lot of songs that were so avant for them, even for them, they were avant-garde. And in retrospect, in that one listen, I don't know if they were horrible. I just know they weren't giving me what I wanted, and that's a problem when you listen to music. You want certain things out of the music, and then you don't get it. So then that becomes the problem. But there was something also Chuck D said in his book. Did he say in his book? I think he said it in his book, Fight the Power, 1997. But he also said it a lot of times later. Maybe on Twitter too. I may have read this. But Chuck D said that after a veteran, not a bullshit veteran, you know those veterans that they've been around making shitty music for a long time? We're talking about veterans like Cypress Hill with quality albums, classics, quality albums, nothing really bad in the catalog. If you bought every Cypress Hill record, you wouldn't be at a loss for your money, you know? You'd like some more than others. But Chuck D said that certain artists, they need to have a leeway to experiment. And so like when he had Music in Our Message in 94, they were experimenting, and they felt that they were wrongly accused of failing when they were expecting to deliberately experiment from the sound that was expected. And on this album, though, I'm going to listen to it again thinking as this is a veteran group experimenting. If that's the case, definitely Muggs hit it on. It's just that on the Muggs solo album, right, Day of the Assassin, he had so much tough drums on there. You know what I mean? He gave formats for Ito and Cool G Rap to really go in, and that was what I was wanting on the Cypress Hill album. Instead, I got some crazy shit though, and you know, there's a whole bunch of good brothers here smoking and shit. I don't smoke at all, and I'm like, maybe the Cypress Hill shit isn't for me. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they finally made a record that is only for fucking smokers and shit. You know what I mean? So the next thing I could do to try to get into a framework where I could feel like I was smoked out is just not go to sleep. You know what I mean? And only on 3 hours of sleep, I'm gonna wake myself up and then listen to the album though. So I might be at least I'll be fucked up. You know, you know, I'm a man that loves his Baji Chew. You know, after he trains. So, you know. So maybe I'll go excess on the Baji Chew and then listen to the Cypress Hill album. But as far as other things, there were a lot of great things on it though. But definitely one of those albums where you go, first listen is no good. Now you also had, this was all the same day, you had Sadat X and El Da Sensei. It's like two lowlives coming together, making the album XL, right? X and then El Da Sensei, right? XL. And off the first listen, it reminds me of El Da Sensei's solo albums in the early 2000s, like Relax, Relate. I forget the whole name of that album. But it has more of the tone of an El Da Sensei album in that it's got a lot of thick drums, a lot of hype, a lot of very hype, you know, horn section sounding songs that, you know, that have the MCs dive in and shit. And it wasn't as topical as the last couple of Sadat X albums are, like specific topics though. But for Sadat, there's some songs that I heard there that were really, really clever that he had. And El Da Sensei's flow is one of the most fluid things out there, you know? So it's definitely a dope album, you know? Definitely. That one is the one that at first listen is no good either because the album has like 20 plus tracks and it's not really not skid heavy. So they went back to the way it used to be, you know? They gave you a long ass album, you know? And it's worthwhile, you know? Definitely worthwhile. I thought there's an album that I think I'm going to guess that it may have gotten longer because this album was supposed to come out years ago. In fact, DJ Toshi, my brother at Classic Storm Radio, when we do the show, we were supposed to do a Sadat X show, and we were supposed. He actually did a Rock the House show, concert show for Sadat X, and Elder Sensei. It was a release party for XL, and I told Doshi, did the actual album come out? So they did a release party for some shit that didn't come out. So now they did the official release party. You know what I mean? But it's definitely a good album though. You know, that one is one. I probably should have been bench pressing and doing weights though with this one instead of Cypress Hill though. You know, because that had me not giving a fuck about shit and just not doing anything. You know, but then we have Seed and Knots. You know, that's Bad Seed and the producer Knots. They have an album called Highway to Hell. I'm gonna say I don't like it as much as what Bumpy Knuckles did with Knots, because Bumpy Knuckles has so much to say in the mic. You know what I mean? He always has a lot to say in the mic, and I don't think that the topics were these were more bars. You know what I mean? And being that like I've been real critical about bars, you know, niggas with bars, you know, like I kill this abstract bars, and I went through that in the appropriation show. So I can't really then applaud everybody just for having bars. Now, he did have concepts of flows. There were a lot of experimental flows here, and I know when I listen to it again, I'm going to hear more ideas. But I do give it up to Knots. I like when a producer does more than a different guy's album, and they give a guy a different sound. You know what I'm saying? And he definitely gave him a different sound. You know, you know, the musicality of it was much more dynamic. It was much more light and high, and it wasn't as thick and gritty a musical sound as what he was given Bumpy. But they were both gritty. You know, the drum work is really what I was impressed with on both of them, as far as like what's the same on both. You know, so check it, right? Yeah, I had written this. I had said it was a uniquely cryptic musical backdrop, because Seed is kind of a cryptic MC with a comedic tone, you know, and a comedic reference point. So I thought he matched them really nice there. You know what I mean? Then you got an album. I think this brother's out in Miami. His name is Kingdom Come. And he has a couple of works out if you go to his Bandcamp. And this is called All Beasts Show Their Teeth Too. And a very strong album, a very long album. But I don't know. I would love to ask, you know, MCs out there if they just give me their answer or something like that, because he did this, right? I know that, you know, Raekwon ended Shaolin vs. Wu-Tang on a Black Thought verse. And I always thought, like, yo, how could you end your album with another guy ripping it? You know what I'm saying? Like, end your album with Black Thought killing it. You let it go because Raekwon, you're not going to be like, forget him, because, you know, he made a great show of it. But on this album, when I hear Kingdom Come, I don't hear him start immediately. The first track has DV alias Christ, right? And for everybody that knows DV alias Christ for doing those deep-toned, he's like a deep-toned Medina version of Nate Dogg. But yo, you got to hear him on this, because he sings songs for a little bit, and then he goes into this cryptic verse that is in between his sing-song and in between a regular verse tone, and it sounds fucking crazy. And when I heard the album, I said, oh shit, this might go downhill from here, because this brother just put like an incredible performance leading off his own album by somebody else. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why you would do that. You know what I'm saying? Why would you do that? Because I know that DV alias Christ, I have to go check, but he's supposed to be coming out with something. And now all I'm thinking is like, yo, I got to go back to his Instagram or something and see when he's coming out, because if he rhymes like that, this shit would be crazy. But my thing with this album from Kingdom Come is that he's very good MC. I love his perspective, obviously, because I definitely see it. He comes from a perspective of knowledge of self, insights, and a low life standard. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate everything, his theme, his presence, his countercultural tone. I love all of that, because it seems it comes off sincere completely. But I think that in this album, because it's a little bit longer, and I think for his own abilities, because he's one of those over enunciators. Like if you're thinking of Uncle John, you know what I mean? Like I put the rhymes in like that. You know, he's one of those MCs. You know, not as intense as Uncle John, but a little almost like that, a little bit less. And what happens is he tries to be too eclectic on the album, tries to do too many different types of sounds, and I think that it forced him to have more, to keep his themes more generic instead of getting a little bit deeper into the themes that he was going into. And then there are some fails in styles, because when he goes trap on Ball with Mine, I was like, that was a fucking skip right there. I just can't do it. You know what I mean? So I heard it once, but then when I hear it the second time, I was like, skip. So that becomes a problem. You know what I'm saying? That becomes a problem. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of clues in Kingdom Come's album that show he's got a lot more that he could get to work with as far as ideas and throwing them in there. Like there's one song where he's trying to show the idea of death, and he samples not some crazy, you know, idiot talking about death or like some serial killer. He samples Jiddu Krishnamurti. Is that people won't know it's Jiddu Krishnamurti, one of the great philosophers of the modern era from India. And just that alone shows a lot of depth. And, you know, hopefully a brother like that is listening to more Jiddu Krishnamurti to expand the framework of what he started and what he's getting into on these albums. Because there's a lot of stuff, ideas that I'd like to see him mine a little bit further than the surface theme that he gives to it. Yeah. And another album I did hear was I did hear Recognize Ali, the Outlawed. I'm gonna say this. These are bangers. These are bangers. They're you know, they slap, they hit you hard. The verses are battle bars. But I noticed that Recognize Ali, his pitch constantly on social media is that he's a workhorse. He gives you mad work. He's got 3 albums coming. He's got 3 albums done and released. He's got more coming. And he's going to keep flooding and flooding. And I think with what Recognize Ali knows and what he can do on certain songs, this is why, and I'm speaking as a listener, which is really where I have to listen to. And also, as a journalist, I have to catalog from the perspective of how a listener would experience it, as opposed to how the fraternity of other MCs would hear it. The fraternity of other MCs respects the workhorse nature of Recognize Ali. For me, I think the workhorse nature, maybe paying you and all that, and I cannot deny that, but in judgment of music, I can't use your monetary success or your best monetary strategies and hustles to make me judge the music differently. I have to judge it based on the music, and the music is is a little diluted. I could hear specifically that if they were funneled into less songs, and some of these songs had a little bit more time, they'd say more things than just hit, you know, the concept of what, you know, and the concept ends up being what was being sampled. You know, so like if you cut up, I kill motherfuckers daily, that's the name of the song, Kill Motherfuckers Daily, you know what I mean? So what happens is that you're not getting much, you're just getting a guy that's pumping out shit, you know? And people always go back to Tupac where he was pumping out shit. And the thing about Tupac was that, first of all, Tupac's posthumous release material, except for the first double album that is a must-have, they're all basically stretched out thin. They're all basically stretched out thin. And the reason Tupac had such good ideas that he could stretch out so long and even rhyme so much is because Tupac was filled with themes and concepts. People say he was not a lyricist. He wasn't a wordplay MC. He didn't play with words. And he didn't play with cadences and verbal dexterity that much. But he had verbal techniques. He had inflection. He had all these things. He had a lot of gifts that New York MCs don't even have. And he had topical structure that was way beyond the normal. GOAT level topical structure, among other things that make him a GOAT candidate for me. The most unique one, but definitely one. But what happens is this, right? Is that I could tell that Recognize could say so much more if he just worked on these songs a little harder. And that's what bothers, you know what I'm saying? And the last album I'm going to talk about is Black Sheep Tortured Soul. I'm going to leave it really quick. This album is filled with ideas. You know, Drez still has that perfect tone. He's got, the whole song has ideas, concepts, and it was just really refreshing. And it's a shame that this album is getting lost. I'm going to listen to it again, though, and tell you what I think about it the next show, because there's so much more I wanted to say about it, but my first listen didn't go deep enough. I just was registering that, man, every song Drez has specific ideas. And it wasn't Black Sheep 1991 where it was just like hose and some clothes, you know, like he had real concepts and stuff, and he was really getting into it. And his vocal tone, just like Sadat X, it has gotten richer. It hasn't really been lost, you know. So a really great record, you know what I mean? The album's called The Tortured Soul, Black Sheep. Great album. I'm just saying that off the first listen, you know what I mean? But with that said, we went through more music. I will definitely have the Quincy show prepared for the next time, okay? So the Quincy Appreciation Lecture show, talking shit about Quincy, all that, let's throw darts at Quincy, because he had a lot of white wives, though. We'll throw darts, too, right? But, like Tupac did, right? No, we'll talk about all that. But, the complete Quincy hour will be the next show unless we have a guest actually walk into the fucking studio. If not, that's what it's going to be. But until then, there will be a lot more stories to tell, writings to recite, and records to rewind and reminisce. Just remember the perfection to Jerry Gonzalez. Peace to Cyrus Malachi, and I am your host, Sunni Azallah, aka Skillustrated Low. And as always, the Power Right Show is a never respect fake broadcast. Peace.